Hey everybody, this is the Frederick Review here, and I'm here today with Kate Cullen. She is the owner of Mediation Services of Frederick. Kate, I'm just going to turn it over to you. Why don't you give yourself a more thorough introduction and tell us a bit more about you and your business?
Oh, sure. Okay. I've been mediating for almost 20 years. I do mostly family. I do some family business and some elder care mediation. I do neighborhood sometimes, and I do small and large group facilitation. I also consult with nonprofit boards and nonprofit organizations in the state of Maryland. I've got three boys who are in their late 20s, early 30s, so a lot of mediating going on in my house when they were teenagers. Um, and I guess I have a master's degree in community org and social administration with a minor in policy analysis. And so I really enjoy the community organization piece, and that's what I consider the facilitation piece to be part of that. I get court referrals. I work for 4 different circuit courts, including Baltimore City. So I get the court cases as well as, people call me and just come to me naturally on their own for parenting plans or divorce mediation, or, what do we do with mom and dad? The electricity is getting cut off in their house and we don't know what to do. How
Right.
can you help us talk to them?
It
So
seems
that's
like
what I do.
it covers a really wide scope.
Yeah, it's pretty broad.
Yeah, I don't know a whole lot about mediation, but that's my initial takeaway from that. That's really
Yeah.
that's cool though. I mean, that's a good thing, but it's really that's really expansive.
So I also teach at Mount St. Mary's. I teach the mediation class and
Oh,
conflict resolution classes at Mount St. Mary's. Been doing that since 2006.
I live right by Mount St. Mary's. That's
Okay, cool.
yeah,
And I train with the National Center for Mediation Education.
cool.
So
That's
been
awesome.
all over the country and to the Ukraine to help them start their mediation program in Lviv. So it's very exciting stuff.
Yeah, wow. You're like in mediation, like you just dabbled everywhere. That's sweet. So what made you want to start doing mediation? What got you hooked? What was it?
Well, the University of Maryland Graduate School of Social Work, where I got my master's degree, had a class. They were offering 80 hours of mediation training. 40 of it was basic, and 40 of it was family and divorce. And it piqued my interest about in 2001. And so I went ahead and took the training. It was pretty intensive training. 1 week was in May, 1 week was in June. And after the first half day, I called my husband and said, okay, I figured out what I want to do for the rest of my life. This makes so much sense. It's logical, it's thoughtful, it takes into account people's emotions without doing therapy and getting really messy into the emotions. And I don't tell them what to do. I'm the third neutral in the room that's helping them have a conversation. And it just seemed like the least stressful way to deal with conflict. And so I was really psyched about it. I finished my training and in August got a job with Community Alternative Mediation Inc., which is now closed. And we're re-energizing it under a different name, but it closed in 2017. But I was the director there from 2001 until 2011. And so in addition to my private practice, I was really involved in the community and partnering with lots of agencies like the court system and DJS and the Office of Children and Families and the school system, Frederick County Public Schools, to bring mediation to all of those agencies and all of those worlds. So that we could work with teenagers as well, and we could set up mediation programs in the schools and stuff. So that's kind of how I got started, and I just got really involved in it and got on some statewide committees and just ran with it.
Right. I thought it was really early in that you talked about, one of the reasons you like it is because how thoughtful it is and how, focused and things like that. And that all is interesting to me. I don't know much about mediation. This is one of the first conversations I've ever had about it. But
Mm-hmm.
I do know when I was still in school, I took a seminar class on media issues, and I'm drawing that in my head because a lot of that it was a long class where it was really focused and thoughtful discussion about really complex things, and I really enjoyed that. And so when you talk about mediation and when you're mediating, I'm sure everything that you mediate is going to be different based on the nature of it. Um, but it kind of seems like the core remains of it are that it needs to be thoughtful no matter what. And I think that interests me personally, from just my standpoint. Um, let's see here. Oh no, my
Well,
notes.
and you have to be patient. You have to be patient so that, because they come in and they say, this is our conflict. But as you peel back the layers of the onion, you get to that core, like you were talking about, the core of what's really going on.
Right.
And, and it might not be what they came in with. It might be something totally different. So it's on some level, what you're really doing is helping them to heal, not fix, but heal the relationship between the folks.
Right. That's really fascinating to me. So what sets you and your business apart from other people or businesses like you?
Um, You mean other mediation businesses or just other businesses in general?
Other mediation businesses.
Oh, okay. Well, I offer a sliding scale fee so that, because I believe that mediation should be available to everybody in the community, regardless of, their socioeconomic backgrounds. So I think that that sets me apart from most mediators. Do not come at it from a legal background. Mediation actually started through the human services background, social workers, psychologists, counselors, and has been what a lot of us are talking about now on LinkedIn. On my LinkedIn, there's a whole group of us talking about the legal system has hijacked it in some level. And so what happens is that I don't do settlement conferences. I do mediation. So that if you come to me, you are getting an open, fair, and transparent process. I'm not invested in any way, shape, or form in either of the parties. And I'm definitely not invested in the outcome. Mediation is all about the mediator controlling the process of mediation and the participants controlling the outcome. So whatever decisions they make based on who they are and their lives and what they know they can live with. And it's needs based. It's not, based on greed or financial whatever. It's a needs based process. What can you live with and what do you need in order to survive?
Do you ever like have a hard time, maybe like not getting attached or with people that maybe don't listen to reason, or have you been doing it for so long where you feel like, I did what I need to do, where it goes from here is fine? Or is that a struggle every now and then, or
Every once in a while, you'll meet a client or a participant who is really emotionally invested in his or her position and what she or he wants. And
right,
it's really hard through the open-ended questions, through the clarifying questions, through all the communication and listening, strategic listening skills that you have, you just can't get there. They just, they're really stuck in their position and you can't get them out of their position. It
right,
doesn't happen very frequently, but when it happens, a good mediator knows when to recognize it's happened and be able to say, I may not be the mediator from you. I don't feel like we're progressing very well. And so I can give you a list of other mediators, or if you have decided that you want to go to court, I can give you a list of attorneys in the community, and it's up to you. A couple of times I've done that, and the person that's been stuck in their position will totally unwind
right,
immediately. You can see their nonverbal language. They lay back, they relax. They're like, okay, so what she's saying to me is, I presented my side, my perspective of what's going on. And we use the word perspective in mediation, not side. And I need to figure out how to get outside of myself so that we can resolve this in a more peaceful fashion, because I don't want to go to court.
because that seemingly may be the moment where they kind of think, oh, they're helping me, they're trying,
Right. We're trying to help you, and
right,
going to court's probably going to take a year or more, and it gets very costly, even though we know that in Maryland now 80% of all cases are self-represented. That means that parties don't have attorneys. It's still a real toll emotionally, and it's very stressful
yeah,
to do that. And you don't know what's going on. People file motions, and then I have clients that come in and say, I don't understand this. What is this? And I said, well, why don't you read it to me, and then we can the two of you can talk about what you think it says,
Right.
what you think it means, because I'm not going to tell him what it means.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting to me too, just because I think like human nature is just kind of to want to be right. So
Sure.
you can look at that from a lot of different angles, but just even I'm kind of thinking of it as just the profession itself. It takes a unique skill set, I feel like, because you're still human too. So you're as a mediator, it's like you are really trying to get people to come to an understanding, and there is no right or wrong.
Right.
But that's kind of against a little bit kind of how people click, so to speak. So it's fascinates me.
Yeah. And they'll try to draw you in. They'll say things like, so you know what I'm talking about, right?
Right,
You
yeah,
understand. And you're like, well, you tell me what your understanding of this is. How are you feeling about it? Because
right,
it's not about me. It's about them. And they have to, but you're right. In our society, we have this mentality, there's a right and there's a wrong. And I'm right and she's wrong. And this mediator, you're going to tell him or her that he's wrong. And I'm like, no,
yeah.
not my job.
No, I definitely could see where that would pop up. If you could go back, whenever it may be, if you could go back in time, what's a piece of advice that you'd give yourself?
In terms of mediation.
Could be. I mean, it doesn't have to be anything.
Oh, okay. To when you are in conflict, to figure out a way, and I teach this in the communication workshop that I do, figure out a way to back yourself up. Take the responsibility to say to the other person, hold on, wait a second, I need to think about this, because it sounds like we're really invested in this topic, and I would really like to have some time to process it, because I don't process things really, really super fast on the spot. Like it gets said, and a second later, I've got my statement, you know.
Right.
So I think being able to, there are times in my life when I wish I had taken that step back and said, okay, wait a minute, Kate, think about this for a minute. Tell this individual that you care about them, you really want to work through this with them, but that you need some time to think about what your next steps are going to be, and ask them if it's okay if we meet another day or another time.
Right.
And resume the conversation when we've both had an opportunity to think about what are our individual goals in this conversation. What do we each need to get out of this? What can we get out of it? What can we live with getting out of this conversation? Rather than continuing to stand there and fight with them, and
Right.
So that would be my advice to myself, because before I did mediation, I think there were not a lot, but there were many times that I can think of where I just dug my heels in and just, battled it out. And
Right.
whether I won, in quotes, or not, it still felt really bad afterwards. It still felt like there was no victory in it. You know what I mean? It was like, gee, that was really tough. And now I've affected my relationship with this person or that person. And chances are we won't be doing that again, or, we won't be friends like we were before or whatever. So I think that's important. The best thing that's ever happened to me through the process is watching my oldest child, who's 33, parent his own children using mediation techniques. It has been, and the 4-year-old totally responding to it. So wait a minute, we don't want to do that to our brother. Let's sit down and talk about what we're doing here. And so not saying to the child, that's bad behavior, stop it.
Right.
Kind of, wait a minute, I'm not sure you want to do that to your brother. Can we sit down and have let's talk about that. And literally taking the child over and getting down to the child's level and just having a conversation, and not reprimanding, not telling the kid he's wrong or there's something wrong with him or her, just having that conversation. And my 4-year-old grandson even said to me one day, I'd had them for 5 days. I have a 4-year-old and a 3-year-old grandson. I'd had them for 5 days while their sister was born. And it must have been the last day they started to fight over the train. And I raised my voice, not as loud as I could have, but just enough, because I wanted to get their attention.
Mm-hmm.
And the 4-year-old went right upstairs to my bedroom and closed the door. And so I gave him a few minutes, and then I went upstairs and I said, "Can we have a conversation?" And he said, "No, not yet. I'm angry with you, and this is my time out, and I need to have some time to think about
And he's
this."
only
And I
4.
was like, "Oh my God, this kid." And when I said something to my son, he said, "Yeah, well, that's what they've been taught, that they can have when they get angry, whether it's with one of us as their parents or with his brother, until they're ready to come out and talk to us."
Yeah.
They, I thought that was just, so the two things that struck me was getting down on his level, eye to eye, very gently saying, "We need to have a conversation about this." And then the whole thing that when you're angry, take some step backs, take a time out, think about it. When you're ready, we can have a conversation.
That's crazy. I mean, so it's 4 years old too. That it
Yeah.
starts to shape at that point. That's wild. What's your favorite part about mediation? What do you enjoy the most?
I enjoy being able to help folks come to their own decisions and come up with their own agreement. And I like the feeling that they give me when they leave and say, "This was really helpful. We want to really thank you for helping us." Um, and that to me is because as my youngest son always says to me, "You actually are making an impact now. When you die, we're not going to hear all of this stuff about, she did this, she was great, whatever, whatever. You're doing it right now. You make a difference in families in our community right this minute." And I thought that was so touching for him to say that. And because he's watched me go through the process, and he's observed his mom doing mediations, because he's a mediator too, through the school.
Yeah, I was gonna ask.
He got his through the school system. Um, I think both my middle one and my younger one took the peer mediation training in school. But the point is that, I think that I impact people now,
Yeah,
and that it's gonna, and because we're planning for the future, because mediation's 80% about the future, I'm not only impacting them at that moment, I'm impacting their next steps, which is, and I haven't told them what to do. I've just literally sat there and allowed
right.
them to figure it out.
Which is kind of the secret to it all, really, because you don't
Yeah.
want to tell people, because that's where it kind of turns the other way. Because people kind
Well,
of
yeah, then you're
resist that.
responsible.
Right.
Then you're responsible if it doesn't work out.
Right.
And it's not your life. So
Right.
I have enough to be responsible for.
Yeah. um. So, what's the hardest thing for you just throughout doing this?
Mm. I think in the actual mediation or in my practice.
Uh, whatever. Could be either or.
Okay. So I don't find anything in the mediation particularly difficult in the process itself when I'm doing the process itself. Um, I think the most difficult piece is when um, folks try to call you on the phone, email you, or come by to talk to you individually, and you have to say, "I can't have this conversation with you. Um, if we're going to have a conversation through email, we need to include the other person." Um, Unless they're sending me an email that they want to send to the other person. And part of what I do in my practice is, if they have an email they want to send to the other person, they can run it by me first, and I can take out all the inflammatory language, and I can say, "So is this what you're asking for? Is this what you want to say to the other individual?" And I send it back to them without all of the stuff,
Right.
or big red letters or whatever. And then they get to review it, and they can decide, "Yeah, this is what I want to ask or say," and then they can send it to them. So, and that takes time sometimes, a lot of time. But I guess that whole, them just trying to get you on their side because they clearly still don't understand the process.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, yeah. That sounds about right. I mean, I don't know a whole lot, but I mean, that seems like it would be difficult. What for you right now with your practice is the number one way that you bring people for your services? I feel like you seem like you do a lot, so I don't know if there's really one answer to this. But what for you? What would you say is the number one
Word
way?
of mouth.
Word of
Word of mouth.
mouth.
Yeah. People that come to you, and then, and people will then call and say, so and so referred me. And I really, because of confidentiality, and in Maryland, there's the Confidentiality Act. So I really can't say, oh, yeah, I saw Jane and John.
Yeah.
I can't do that. So I can just say, oh, so you were referred by a former client. And I just write that on the, because I do an intake and I write on where they heard about me,
Mm-hmm.
or how they heard about me. But word of mouth is the best way that people hear about me. Also, other referrals from other mediators. I just got a referral the other day from Montgomery County mediator who I know, who referred somebody because one person lives in Frederick. And the court system, of course, like I'm on the court panels with 4 courts, so I get cases from those places. Most of my caseload on the court rosters comes from Baltimore City and Anne Arundel County.
Really?
Yeah, Frederick County has a hard time with, at least from my perspective, they have a hard time sending cases to people who don't have a legal background.
Gotcha.
So for me, there's the professional mediator, and then there's this whole other area that people say, well, I'm a lawyer mediator. Well, to me, if you're in that mediation role, you are a mediator. You are not a lawyer mediator.
Right.
So I consider myself a professional MCDR certified mediator.
Right.
I don't do social work while I'm in there. I don't analyze people. I don't do any of that kind of stuff. And so, not being a lawyer, I wouldn't worry about practicing law in a mediation session because I'm not a lawyer.
Right.
So went to law school, left.
How has technology affected your business? How has it helped you?
Well, Baltimore City is now sending me a lot of cases where I have to do telephone or Zoom conferencing.
Okay.
Where one person is in a totally different state. And Anne Arundel County's done that a couple of times too. They'll send them to me because they know I have Zoom and I can set that up.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's how technology has affected it. I have a website, and I have clients that will, when they say we want to post something on your website, I give them access to do that. So they can post their experience in mediation on their website. I do a little bit through Facebook with my private practice, but not much. But I would say that the way that technology's really impacted it is now that we do Zoom conference kinds of mediations, which we never did before. We'd have to wait till the person who lived out of state to come into state to do the mediation.
Right.
And oftentimes that would be just before a court date.
Right.
So there was a lot of pressure. And so this way I can set it up months before a court date, and we can do it and then you have to fax the consent to mediate form because everybody has to sign a consent form. And so you got to have access to a fax or email or whatever.
It's ironic that you bring up the Zoom meeting and stuff as we're talking over a Google Hangout.
Right. Right. So yeah. So see.
Yeah. My last question, and then I actually have a few more other questions, but this is my last one for on the record. What's the best piece of advice that you'd give yourself, or not yourself? I did that. I always do that. What's the best piece of advice that you'd give to others thinking about getting into mediation or starting their own practice?
Don't quit your day job.
Good advice.
The field in Maryland is really flooded with mediators, a lot of trainers. I sit on the MPME training committee, the Maryland Program for Mediator Excellence Training Committee. And the last time we met, there were 35 of us around the table. So there's a lot of trainers in the state. And so I would suggest that you not view it as your only means of employment. If you are going to be a professional mediator and you don't have a legal background. And a lot of lawyers, and I had a lawyer in a mediation training recently who said, well, I'm just here because I want the extra skill set. And I will admit that I went off on her. And I said, this is not a skill set. This is really important stuff that you're doing. This is not something you just add to a huge toolbox and you dump it in there and say, okay, so when I want to mediate, I mediate, or when I want to strategically listen, I'll pull it out. This is a lifestyle change.
Right.
You have to figure out how to walk the talk. I frequently, when people are communicating with me, they'll say, well, that or this, and I'll literally say, I need to. Did we get lost?
I think for a second, but I only just the last sentence is yeah.
Okay, so I asked them, so what is the this that you're talking about? What is the that? Help me understand, because I want to know what we're talking about. And so I think that's really an important piece to remember and to clarify. And I think you can use that in any place that you are. So you need to really walk the talk.
Right.
With family, with your colleagues, with your coworkers, with your participants, just with everybody.
Hey, I mean, that's awesome. I mean, all 10, we went through 10 questions here, and all of them were thorough and interesting and great. And this is something I've never, heard about or really, well, I've heard of it, but I've never really taken the time to know or learn much about it. But it's, it's fascinating to me. So this is.
There is the mediation program in Frederick where we offer mediation free or at low cost to anybody. And so I'm involved in that too. So if somebody feels like maybe they can't afford a mediator, even me on a sliding scale fee, they can certainly call the community problem solving program, and they can, get mediation depending on their income for free, or $40 for a 2-hour session, which is really inexpensive.
Yeah, I love it. That's all. I mean, that's awesome. Do you have, before we go, do you have anything that you'd like to add? Whether it be about your practice or you or anything.
Just that I'm really passionate and compassionate about my practice. It's really important to me to be out in the community and be able to offer this service and do this for folks. And I feel like, especially when you work with families, that if children see their parents doing something so emotional and stressful as a divorce or a parenting plan if they're not married, through this system, through mediation rather than the court system, they learn that there are other ways to resolve conflict other than going to the court or calling the police, and that it's doable.
Right. Awesome. That's awesome.
It creates a more peaceful family, which then should create a more peaceful neighborhood, which hopefully creates a more peaceful Frederick County.
Yeah, I mean, that's really important stuff that you're doing. I think that's all just fantastic.
Thank you.
So what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to take this recording. I am going to upload it onto my editing system and all that, and I'm going to transcribe it. So I'm going to take this all down and get it into writing. Once that happens, and right now, that's the long process. This is the easy part. We're looking to kind of be more efficient with that, but right now that takes a bit. So once I get everything up, we'll get it on the site, and then I will email you the links for the site, to how you can find the things and all that.
Great.
So yeah, this was great. I enjoyed it. I hope you did. Yeah, this was awesome.
Well, thank you for being curious enough to ask the questions.
Yeah, no problem.